I didn't have enough money on my first date and had to endure the ultimate humiliation. Hey Reddit, I'm going to share something that happened to me recently, and trust me, I am absolutely humiliated. I don't know if I should be mad at myself, mad at her, or just mad at the universe in general. Either way, I feel like I need to get this out of my system because what happened that night still haunts me. So here's the thing. I was set up on a date by a mutual friend. A blind date, to be exact. I'm not the most outgoing person, and honestly, I was nervous. Really nervous. I don't usually do the whole dating scene, but I'd heard a lot of good things about this girl, Olivia, and I figured why not? I went into it with the usual first date jitters. You know the feeling, right? You try to pick a good spot, wear something that makes you feel confident, but not like you're trying too hard. I thought I was prepared, but as soon as we met, I could tell Olivia was different. She was absolutely stunning. Like, really stunning. I mean, we're talking perfect hair, perfect smile, and if I'm being honest, the kind of beauty that makes you nervous to even look them in the eyes. I'm not bad looking myself, but being around someone like her, well, let's just say I felt way out of my league. The date started off fine. We went to this nice, trendy little bistro in the downtown area, the kind of place with exposed brick walls, fancy cocktails, and prices that you probably shouldn't look at unless you're comfortable with the idea of overpaying for a small plate of food. I thought we were off to a good start. We were talking, laughing, getting to know each other. She was easy to talk to, way easier than I thought someone like her would be. But then the bill came. I had checked my wallet before I left the house, and I was pretty sure I had enough to cover the meal. Sure, I wasn't rolling in cash, but I figured I could at least manage a decent first date without it turning into a financial crisis. I was wrong. When the check came, I froze. I had miscalculated, and I mean really miscalculated. I'd gotten a couple of drinks, but I hadn't realized that each drink cost about as much as a small car payment. And of course, Olivia, being the charming, graceful woman she was, had ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. I tried to play it cool, acting like I wasn't internally freaking out, but as I reached for my wallet and opened it, I immediately felt the panic set in. I had like half of what I needed to pay. My heart started racing and I could feel myself starting to sweat. Olivia was still talking, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could focus on was the check in front of me and the growing pit in my stomach. I'm not the type of person to ask for help in situations like this. I've always been proud, maybe to a fault. So I sat there for a few seconds, pretending like everything was fine, hoping against hope that I could come up with some solution on the spot. But there was no solution. I was short by at least $40, and I had no idea what to do. I thought about telling her. I thought about just coming clean. Hey, Olivia, I don't have enough money for the bill, but my pride kept me from speaking up. What would she think of me? Would she judge me? Would she laugh and walk out the door? I couldn't bear the thought of that. So I did the next thing that came to my mind, and looking back now, I can't believe I actually did this. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and texted my friend, who had set us up, to please send me some money on Venmo. I tried to make it sound casual, like, hey, got myself in a little pickle, can you send over $40? But I could already tell how ridiculous it sounded. She was still talking when I sent the message, and I was praying, literally praying, for that notification to pop up on my screen. Every second felt like a lifetime. My mind was racing, my stomach turning, and I could feel my palms sweating. Please let her not notice, I kept telling myself. But of course, Olivia noticed. She paused mid-sentence, looking at me with confusion in her eyes. Are you okay? She asked, her voice soft but with that hint of concern that you can't ignore. I don't even know what came over me, but I panicked. I panicked and said, yeah, just checking something real quick. She didn't press further, but as soon as she saw me glance at my phone and then quickly tuck it back into my pocket, she knew. She knew something was off. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't stupid. She was too smart for that. The waiter returned, and I was still sitting there, hoping for some miracle. And then it happened. Olivia looked at me straight in the eyes and said the last thing I ever expected. You know, it's really okay if you don't have enough money, she said, her voice almost too sweet. I mean, I'd rather not have an awkward situation, right? And just like that, the air in the room shifted. The last shred of dignity I had left went right out the window. I tried to laugh it off, but it was the most awkward laugh I've ever given in my life. I told her I was just waiting for my friend to transfer me the money, but she wasn't buying it. She could see right through me. To make things worse, the waiter returned with a second check for Olivia, and she, of course, was more than happy to pay for her share. But that's when it hit me. The unspoken, humiliating truth. Olivia had already figured out what was going on. She could tell that I was broke and trying to cover it up, and now she had to deal with the embarrassment of me scrambling around like a fool. I could feel my face burning. My heart was pounding. All I wanted to do was disappear. She was too kind about it, which somehow made it worse. She offered to split the bill with me, but the damage was done. When she paid, she didn't say much. She was polite, but there was this tension between us now, like we both knew what had just happened but couldn't address it. The date ended on a painfully awkward note, and I walked her to her car where she said goodbye without so much as a hug. As she drove off, I stood there feeling like the biggest loser on the planet. The humiliation hit me in waves. I can't believe I let this happen. But here's the worst part. I haven't heard from her since. Not a single text, not a call, nothing. And now, Reddit, I need your opinion. Did I completely ruin my chances with Olivia? Is this one of those things that I'll never live down? Should I just write this off as the worst date ever and move on? Or is there a chance I could salvage this? I'll update you on what happens next, but for now I'm stuck in this sea of embarrassment, trying to figure out if I should just crawl into a hole and never come out. So I was feeling pretty down about everything, but then something unexpected happened. I received a text from Olivia, and honestly I didn't know whether to feel relieved or even more embarrassed. I'll explain in the next post. Okay, so I promised I'd update you all on what happened after Olivia texted me. First of all, let me just say, when I saw her name pop up on my phone, my heart nearly stopped. I wasn't sure if I was about to get a message saying, "Thanks for the awkward date, but no thanks," or something worse, like an outright rejection. But it wasn't that. The message read, "Hey, I've been thinking about last night. I hope I didn't make things weird. I didn't want to embarrass you. Can we talk?" Now, I don't know about you, but I was absolutely floored. I mean, after what happened, I figured there was no way she'd want to talk to me again, let alone give me a chance to explain myself. But this message? It was like a sliver of hope in a storm of embarrassment. I'll be honest, I hesitated. I thought about just leaving it and moving on. I mean, who wants to get dragged into more humiliation, right? But then I realized if I didn't at least respond, I'd never know if there was a chance to fix this. So after pacing around for a few minutes, I decided to send a reply. "I'm really sorry about last night. I didn't mean for things to get so awkward. Honestly, I messed up. I'd love to talk if you're open to it." There was a long pause. Maybe she was thinking about whether or not she should even respond. But then the little dots popped up on my phone, and after what felt like an eternity, she sent back, "It's okay. I get that things happen. How about we meet up for coffee later this week?" I almost couldn't believe it. A second chance. Maybe it wasn't the perfect first date, but she was willing to give me an opportunity to explain myself and hopefully not get judged too harshly for the whole being broken, humiliated thing. I agreed immediately. We set a time for coffee later that week. But let me tell you, I wasn't exactly jumping for joy. I was terrified. I mean, how do you fix something like that? How do you go from guy who couldn't even pay for dinner to someone who could at least act like they have their life together? I felt like I had a mountain to climb. The day of the coffee meetup arrived, and I spent the whole morning psyching myself up. I put on my nicest shirt, the one that made me feel like maybe I wasn't a total disaster. I didn't have the luxury of being able to splurge on a fancy coffee shop, so I chose a local cafe. Nothing too expensive, just something cozy. I figured the setting would help keep things low-key and not make me feel like I was already doomed to fail. When I arrived, she was already there. Olivia was sitting by the window, sipping on a latte, looking completely stunning as usual. Honestly, it was like I was in some kind of weird romantic comedy, except I was the guy fumbling through the whole thing. I approached her nervously, and she smiled warmly, which made me feel a little better, but I could still sense some distance between us. She looked at me as I sat down and said, "I'm glad you wanted to meet up." I was really unsure how to go about this after last time. I nodded quickly. "I totally get it. Honestly, last night was a mess. I really should have been more upfront about my situation." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she stared down at her coffee cup for a few seconds, and then she said something that caught me completely off guard. You know, I didn't think it was about the money at first. She paused, taking a slow sip. I thought it was just you being embarrassed or trying to hide something. She met my eyes. But then I started wondering if there was more to it. I felt my heart skip a beat. More to it? Was she implying that I was hiding something even worse than just being broke? I swallowed hard. What do you mean? She put the cup down gently and leaned forward. I mean, I know we don't really know each other yet, but I've been thinking about the way you reacted. It wasn't just the money, right? It felt like you were really panicking, like there was more going on beneath the surface. My brain started to race. Was she figuring me out? Was she onto me? I knew I had to be careful here, because if she knew I was hiding something, well, that would make everything so much worse. But at the same time, this was my chance to be honest with her. Maybe, just maybe, I could salvage this. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Olivia, I started, but she cut me off. Look, I'm not here to judge you, and honestly, I kind of admire that you're still trying to make this work. I know it sounds weird, but I think I get where you're coming from. I blinked, completely confused. What do you mean? She sat back in her chair, a small knowing smile crossing her face. You're not just worried about money, are you? I think you're worried about your whole life being exposed. She shrugged, almost as if she were talking to herself. You're afraid that if I see the real you, I'll think you're not good enough. For a second, I couldn't breathe. How could she possibly know that? I was trying so hard to keep everything together, to keep my pride intact, but here she was, seeing right through me. The fact that she could sense that much about me made me feel both seen and exposed in the worst way. But then something incredible happened. She smiled softly and said, I've been there too. I know how it feels to put on a front, to act like everything's fine when it's really not. And trust me, I don't expect you to be perfect. I just want someone real. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Here she was, not judging me for my mistakes, not shaming me for being broke or embarrassed or anything else. She was giving me a chance to just be myself. We ended up talking for hours, not about money, not about mistakes, but about real stuff, our lives, our families, our struggles. It was honestly one of the best conversations I've ever had. By the end of the date, Olivia said, I really appreciate your honesty. I'm glad we could clear the air. And with that, I finally felt like I could breathe again. There was still something between us, some spark. Maybe not the perfect, smooth first date, but there was something real there. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a failure. I didn't walk away with all the answers, but I walked away knowing I hadn't ruined my chances, at least not entirely. Update, 2 days later. So I know I promised an update after the coffee date, and here's where things get even more interesting. After that meetup, I thought it was over, but Olivia texted me again, and this time it's not what I expected. All right, Reddit, here's the last update, and I'm finally ready to tell you how this whole saga turned out. I'm not sure what I was expecting when Olivia texted me again after our coffee date, but the last thing I thought would happen was the curveball she threw my way. So, after that coffee date where we talked for hours and I thought things were looking up, I went home feeling a little lighter, more hopeful. Honestly, I didn't want to get my hopes up too much, but I felt like we had made some real progress. I mean, we'd opened up to each other, shared some personal stuff, and for once I wasn't drowning in shame. I was on the couch, scrolling mindlessly through my phone when her message popped up. It read, Hey, I've been thinking. I really appreciate you being honest, and I think we should hang out again. But I need to be upfront with you about something first. At this point, my stomach flipped. I've never felt this much dread from a text in my entire life. I had no idea what she was about to say, but the fact that she needed to be upfront immediately made me panic. What did she mean by that? Was she going to tell me she couldn't handle the embarrassment of our first date? Was she going to pull away after everything we'd talked about? I texted back almost immediately, trying to keep my cool. Of course, what's up? Her reply came a few minutes later, and when I read it, I couldn't believe my eyes. So here's the thing. I've been on a couple of dates recently, and I really think you're great. But there's something I need to be honest about. I'm not in the best place for a relationship right now. I've been carrying a lot of baggage, and I don't want to drag you into it unless I'm sure I can give you what you deserve. But I still want to keep in touch, and maybe we can be friends first and see where it goes." I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. My brain was reeling. On one hand, I was relieved that she wasn't rejecting me outright, but on the other hand, it felt like I was back to square one. A friends first situation? Was she saying she wasn't ready for anything serious? Was this just her polite way of saying, "I don't think we have chemistry"? It was hard to say. But after a few minutes of pacing around my apartment and replaying our coffee date over and over in my mind, I realized something. Olivia hadn't just thrown me aside, she'd been honest. She didn't have to tell me all of this. She didn't have to open up about her own struggles and baggage, but she did, and that meant something. I thought about it for a while and then sent her a message that took everything in me to write. "I really appreciate your honesty, Olivia. I understand where you're coming from. I'm not looking for anything rushed either. I think we can see where things go, but no pressure, okay? Let's just keep things casual and see where it leads." I took a deep breath after I sent it. The ball was in her court now. I knew that whatever happened next, it would be on her terms. But it felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to pretend anymore, and I didn't have to hide. Her reply came a bit later. "Thanks for being so understanding. I'm glad we can both be honest with each other. Let's just take it slow, and we'll see where things go from there." It wasn't the passionate confession I was hoping for, but it was real, and sometimes real is all you need. Over the next few weeks, we started hanging out more. We kept things light, nothing too intense, just getting to know each other better. We went to movies, grabbed more coffees, and even had a couple of dinners together. It felt good. It felt normal. No awkwardness, no pressure. And then, about a month later, something shifted. We were sitting in a park talking about everything and nothing when Olivia turned to me and said something that took me completely by surprise. "You know, I wasn't sure at first, but you've really surprised me. I think I'm ready for this if you're still interested." I blinked, feeling my heart race. Was this really happening? "I thought you said you weren't ready for a relationship," I replied, half joking, half stunned. She laughed, that easy, carefree laugh that I had come to love. "Yeah, well, I was wrong. I didn't realize how much I actually wanted to get to know you. The more we've hung out, the more I've realized that there's something here, something worth exploring." We sat there for a long time, just looking at each other, the weight of the moment settling between us. It was like everything came full circle. We both understood each other now, and we had the kind of connection that could build into something real. There were no more barriers, no more awkwardness. And I'll admit it, by the time I kissed her for the first time, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't forced, it just happened. So, where do we stand now? Well, it's been a few months since that awkward first date, and Olivia and I are still together. Things are going great. We're taking things slow, but we're both committed to seeing where this goes. We've had some bumps along the way, nothing is perfect, but we've been honest with each other from the start, and that's made all the difference. Looking back on that first date, I can honestly say that while it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life, it also turned out to be the thing that brought us closer together. Without that moment of humiliation, without her seeing me for who I really was, flaws and all, I don't think we would have gotten this far. If I could go back, would I change anything? Honestly, I'm not sure. I've learned so much about myself, about vulnerability, and about what it means to be real with someone else, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.